Okay. So this is AD&D's Pool of Radiance. This is a pre-recorded run I did silently last night, but because it went well, I've decided to go ahead and add sound to it so I can commentate on it and what's happening. It's starting just like normal, but there's a couple of new strats I'm doing in here. So AD&D Pool of Radiance, first thing we're doing is adjusting speed down to fastest amount so everything can go. We've turned off the sound in the game so that everything can go a little faster. The game is so old that loading, there's no real music in the DOS version of the game. I have in the background playing the Nintendo version. Just kind of for a little bit of ambience. The regular sounds in the game, though, are almost nothing. There's like 6 or 7 sounds regarding steps, attacks, hits, misses, death, a couple of castings. They don't do very much for the game, and they actually lag it extremely, like 10 minutes or so. Time can be lost over the course of my run just from the loading of the sound. It's pretty crazy. So turning it off is a big benefit to the run, and doesn't lose very much. So I've got a party consisting of 3 human male fighters, and 3 half-elf male, 1 fighter cleric, 2 fighter mages, or magic users as they're called in original AD&D. Original AD&D has a lot of very special things about its rules. It is very racist and sexist, as I like to say. I mean, it sounds weird, but it's really the truth. Because only humans can get the maximum strength on fighters of 18-100, only if they're male. Females naturally do not have as good a... Females do not naturally have as good a strength as men do. And other races can't reach the maximum strength either. So 3 human male fighters are the only way to get characters with the maximum strength of 18-100, which is pretty important, actually. That gives you +3 to hit and +6 damage, which is extreme. The half-elves only get 1890, which is +2 to hit and +4 damage. So it's kind of unlucky here that we got an encounter before the first set battle room. There are a number of set places that you can pick up that have encounters in them. In the storyline of the game, the city of Phlan, in north of the Moon Sea of the Forgotten Realms universe, which, if you're familiar with D&D, you probably are semi-familiar with the Forgotten Realms universe. It's been the place where the most amount of novels have been written. It's probably the most popular overall of all the D&D backgrounds. Other later games like Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale were all based in the city of, or in the world of the Forgotten Realms, and especially on the continent of Faerun, which is where we are. Rather than the coast, though, of the West, Sword Coast, where Baldur's Gate takes place, we are in the middle of the land, near the Dale Lens, as it's called, the city of Phlan, which is on the north part of the Moon Sea. And it has a troubled history of being attacked by monsters, and most recently was conquered for like the 2nd or 3rd time by monsters, and now, just in the recently, a group of a very large contingent of humans and related races, dwarves, elves, half-elves, etc., have come back to try and take the city from the monsters, and they've been hiring adventurers to do it. So we, of course, are some of these adventurers that they've hired. And so here we are participating in this. And the first thing we have to do is clear out the slums. Or at least it's one of the very first areas, and it's got the weakest and easiest enemies to fight. And I made a small mistake here, not turning on search. When you walk around the map, it takes 1 minute to walk 1 step on these weird map portions just by basic timing. There is a real-world time clock, and when it turns nighttime, your characters can't enter a lot of shops in the city hall. They're all closed, as they would be in real life. The clock starts, sunrise is at 0000, and it's a 24-hour clock after that, so the sun sets around 1400 hours usually. But if you turn on search, it takes 10 minutes per step, but your greatly increased chance of finding anything special in the area, triggering a hidden loot or a hidden secret, as well as finding random encounters. So In order to clear out the slums, which is worth a good amount of experience and a reward to the party, we have to defeat all of the, or finish all of the event areas in the city, with the exception of one lone one that I never visit because it's not necessary. And then we have to beat 15 random encounters. Experience in first edition D&D does not come very quickly, especially from just encounters. We're getting like 30 to 70 experience from each of these fights, and see, I'm walking back and forth and not getting any encounters. Now I turn on search, and now I'm going to start getting a lot more encounters a lot more quickly. But but anyway, yeah, getting these encounters, we have to get 15 of these random encounters. They're only worth so much experience at first, you know, they don't give very much, but we have to do it to clear out the block, which will give us a lot of experience, so it's worth the time sink for these encounters. In addition, by clearing out the slums, it becomes an easy area. I can go to, I have to walk back and forth through the slums several times over the course of the game, and once you've cleared it out, you don't get any encounters here in the slums, and I can also even rest in the corridors and not get encounters, so I don't need to go to an inn and pay any money for that. And the inns in this place is closer than the inn anyway to the main hub of where I do everything in the city, train and turn in quests and sell my loot off. You don't really need loot and money to buy anything in this game because there's nothing really worth buying after your initial basic equipment. However, this is really odd. I forgot to give arrows to one of my fighters at first instead of Instead, I just spread the arrows around to my guys who have it. Usually, I have enough money to give 3 short bows to the guys in back, and then after encountering enough goblins, I give bows and arrows to the guys in front so they can shoot as well. There's a couple of fights especially where it's much better to have bows than melee weapons. After that, it's not going to matter much. But, so most of the experience comes from loot and stuff. That's what we're trying to gather up. These encounters can be long, but very swiftly taken care of thanks to the power of first level mages. The one advantage that multi-races do have is that non-human races do have in the game is that they can dual multi-class, and when you multi-class, you get the benefits, in first ed D&D at least, you get all the benefits of both classes. So white and gold are fighter magic users, so they can wear plate mail armor and wield weapons and shields and anything they like, and in addition they get magic user spells. They can cast them even while wearing plate mail, which is something later D&D doesn't allow you to do, even if you do take multiple classes like that. So it's very powerful to have that at the beginning of the game. The biggest problem that affects multi-class races doesn't affect them in this game, which is they have an experience limit. So half-elves that are at max, and it depends on your stats, which is one of the reasons why our stats are so high, they max out at 8th level as both fighters and magic users, and at 6th level as clerics. But I'm never going to reach that over the course of this game anyway, so it doesn't matter. However, if I were doing later games, I would pretty much have to go with humans, because, except for a thief class, which they're unlimited growth in. And that would, but because they're so much lower level here, I can use them. And the sleep spell is you only start with 4 spells, and 3 of them are totally useless, but the sleep spell is the most OP spell in the early part of the game, because you put whole groups of enemies to sleep, and enemies who are sleeping or are paralyzed in some way are considered helpless, and helpless enemies get hit by a coup de grace attack, a one-shot that puts them down and dying instantly. So sleeping enemies, not only do they not attack you, but you can one-shot them with anything in the game. A super weak mage with throwing darts that do a maximum of 3 hit points of damage will one-shot a sleeping ogre with a dart. With an ogre having 21 hit points if you manage to put one of those to sleep, which is possible but difficult. You have to be careful how you aim it, because it will affect your party members as well. This game is horrible at friendly fire, which original D&D was. You had to be careful where you place things. Luckily, it's not too hard. It's just a 1 square radius around the center tile that you select. But, of course, Magic Missile's the most well-known D&D spell, and you'll see a bit of that in the game, but for the most part, it's faster just fighting enemies with melee combat and using sleep spells. You can potentially do a lot of damage with high-level magic spells, but it takes a while to get in this game. So my previous routes had me using a human mage to get Fireball for one fight in particular, but it takes a long time to grind up the 25,000 experience you need to make a human mage get level 5 with and get a Fireball spell. So there's a couple other sources of Fireball you can get. Some of them are only random, which if I'm lucky I'll get, but most of the time I'm not that lucky. However, there is one guaranteed source of Fireball I can get, which I've added into the route recently. Greatly saves a lot of time. In addition, so just having characters who can contribute more in combat after casting the little bit of sleep or stinking cloud that they need to helps a lot in this quick run. If eventually I'm going to add this game to Curse of the Azure Bonds to make a single combined run, which I tried to do once a few months ago and it didn't pan out because I accidentally ended up creating a glitch that soft-locked my game, turning off certain important triggers accidentally, which I need to be careful not to repeat as I mess around when I do it again. But eventually, if I can get that working and actually complete both games in a single speedrun, I'll probably need more human mages and stuff, because at the end of Curse of the Azure Bonds, you get high enough level that things like guys like half-elves are not that useful. But for the lower levels, even playing casually, it's really useful to have a lot more multi-class races if you're just playing this game, because, again, the level limit is the main thing, but having the ability to attack and deal damage is bad. Now, when you're multi-class, you do split the experience between them, so it slows you down in your growth, which is one of the reasons why I have 3 human warriors, because their experience is not slowed down. They'll get higher level faster and be more powerful for the end fights. But for the early fights, fighter mages are definitely the most powerful characters, and if you get enough experience, they'll be just about as strong as human fighters anyway. Even though they won't do as much melee damage because their strength won't be as high, their ability to use magic will do a lot. Now, all my characters have 18s and everything because the game does allow you to modify your stats after you create the character, as long as you do it before you begin adventuring. And so we max out all of their stats, which is why all the fighters have 14 hit points and we have 18s and everything, because why would you choose anything else? You can reroll the stats as much as you like, but the only point in doing so is to get more gold. And it's just one of those things that there's absolutely no reason as a speedrun to not have it. If you're playing the game casually and you want a bit more of a challenge, you can go with lower stats. You can even tell yourself, whatever I first roll, I'm going to keep, and that's fine. But in a speedrun, when you need every advantage you can to go as fast as possible, there's really wouldn't even make sense to make an alternate category where it's like, these are the character one-shots I made, because you even if you did that, it's just the nature of a speedrunner, especially, you can do that if you really, really want to, because there's nothing against any of that happening. But, when you see the way speedruns generally work, there are people who are really good at speedruns of things like Mega Man and Super Metroid, who will go through, and if after 15 minutes they're behind their account by too much, they'll go ahead and reload the game, because they know they're not going to get a PB or a world record or something like that, that you're really intense speedrunners. And it's kind of the same general idea with rolling stats. If you were just rolling stats and going with whatever you got, then if you got horrible stats right at the beginning, you'd probably just quit the game and restart it anyway. So it's, just defeats the entire purpose to not max out your stats. So we go with max out characters. The original intent of Modify Stats was not to create maximum stat characters, but to give you a chance to make characters with the same stats as your favorite D&D characters, so you can simulate playing them in this game as well, transfer over your favorite D&D characters, which is a pretty neat idea. But for us, it's just better to munchkin and make superhuman, because that's part of D&D too, is munchkinning rules a lot of the time. Some people would disagree with me, but you see it a lot if you played a lot of role-playing games, and it's fun sometimes. It's good for the speedrun in any case. One of the other things, we're almost done with this grinding, more or less. We have a few minutes left. But goblins are the best thing because we can collect so many arrows from them. I don't need to collect as many arrows as I once did. I never run out. I've always been afraid of running out. But for the most part, a few encounters with goblins and the initial arrows you buy are enough to keep the party going forever. And I can save a little bit of time if I know exactly where to stop grabbing arrows, which I don't yet. There are circumstances where I might need more, but a couple of goblin encounters are really useful. But I'll be grabbing a lot less over the course of this game than I did my previous ones. I have a cleric, and shoutouts to silentsigil, who's been looking at a bunch of stuff, and he actually proposed a couple of the changes I made to this route coming up here in the next 30 minutes or so that changed things up a little bit. And he's wondered if I could drop my cleric, because I don't really use them for much. But I found that more recently, especially with a couple of these fights I'm getting into, I've been using the cleric's spells more and more. So I don't use them very much, but there are a couple of important things that the cleric is good for. Healing in this game is really crappy. You have Cure Light Wounds as your only healing spell, and it heals 1 to 8 points of damage. You don't get any bonus from wisdom or levels or anything. It's just 1 to 8 points of healing. You can only do a few at a time, of course, and it takes, after you cast the healing spell, you have to memorize it in combat, and it could be 1 point. It could take you forever to heal like that, so having one Cure Light Wound spell in situations like that, where it's just in, where blue is down 7, I got lucky and rolled at least 7 points of healing to bring him back up to full. So that can save a bit of time and be a bit of safety. But if multiple people get injured, like 4 or 5 points, then I'm just going to rest for several days, because you regenerate 1 hit point a day in first edition D&D. Because it's faster in real time than standing around and casting the spell, rememorizing the spell, resting, casting the spell, remembering the spell, resting. Later editions of the Gold Box games, Curse of the Azure Bonds, and later ones, they make it a little bit easier to deal with that by adding a fix command, which basically does all of that for you. Memorizes all of your spells as cure spells, casts them all on the characters to heal them, rests, and to rememorize all of your spells. Does it if they're still hurt, it's more cure spells, and just does it automatically, so you keep all the spells on your list, but it's assumed that you're resting and casting healing spells to heal yourself up. Very handy. Some of the things that have been suggested that I've tried out is going to So-Called Keep, the secondary area we'll get to in about 15 minutes or so when we head over there. And you can... So-Called Keep is the other beginning area of the game. It's only got 1 encounter in it and offers some good quick loot. However, these encounters are actually more difficult if you are level 2 on any of your characters. When you're all level 1, all you get is basic kobolds and with like 3 kobold leaders, 4 goblins with 4 goblin leaders, or these group of orcs with no leaders. Those are the 3 types of encounters you can get, and they're a lot easier. If you start adding orc leaders and stuff, they have more numbers, and then the fights take longer. So getting these 15 encounters out of the way at the very first is very, very good. It's the best thing to do overall, so, and again, 30 experience. Oddly, orcs do not have any equipment in the game, even though goblins and kobolds do. And it's one size fits all in this game. Half orcs and kobolds can use the same type of equipment. There's no small or medium size weapons or armor or anything. It's all just one size fits all. So looting the kobolds gives you perfectly usable equipment. But for whatever reason, orcs don't have it. But they do a large amount of damage with their apparently bare hands. So I suppose it's assumed in the game that orcs have just cheap equipment that humans would never want, since they're the generic bad guys. The leaders have actually good equipment, like chainmail armor and battle axes, not that we'll take any of that. So it's actually more convenient that the orcs don't have any good equipment, except for it'd be nice if they had bows and arrows, but since they're not shooting at us, it's better that they don't have bows and arrows. Some of the enemies, like the kobolds, their arrows sometimes don't appear either, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they can shoot infinitely without arrows. I'm not quite sure how it works, but it's something in the coding for some of these unarmed characters. This is, we've completed our 15 encounters, and I'm not good at counting them out. I usually just go until I do about 20 rounds through that area. The area where I was grinding out the encounters is one of the first set encounters of the game. Because of this isometric view, it's a lot better to be going up and down and encounter enemies than it is from side to side. So that's why I go to the second encounter spot to grind out my encounters, so that I'm in position so that all 4 goblin leaders, when I encounter goblin groups, will be next to me. If I go from the side, one of them will be more than 2 squares away from my party, so he will use his bow to shoot at me, which is both A, more dangerous, and B, wastes arrows that I want for myself, so it's a lot more convenient here. This is one of the uses of my cleric. I use detect magic in this battle in order to sort out the good loot quickly from the bad loot. Magical, when you cast detect magic, magical items glow with that. They have that star by them to indicate that they're glowing, and you know they're magical. They don't tell you what there are, and there are a few cursed items in the game, but most cursed items are not encountered in random equipment. I've never seen a random cursed item, although sometimes you get glitched items that have no name and stuff. But in the slums, there are no set encounters with cursed items either. I know what all the items are that drop in most of the slums. There's only like one area with random loot. Here's a +1 short bow with 20 +1 arrows, which will be useful at various points. You know, I can get rid of my regular, which is one of the reasons why I buy short bows, because I can afford them, they're cheaper, and I'm gonna get +1 short bows anyway. Short bows and long bows do the same amount of damage in 1st edition D&D, use the arrows damage, but bows do get pluses to damage even though they technically aren't supposed to. Even in 1st edition D&D, they're just supposed to get pluses to hit, so +1 short bows are really powerful. You don't get strength bonus for damage with short bows, or even with composite bows in this game. Composite bows simply give you a longer reach, and that's it, period. But, so a short bow has a slightly less range than a long bow, but that's the only disadvantage in this game. Otherwise, a +1 short bow is much, much better than a regular long bow. So now we're going around killing. Some of these have good loot and important loot, some of them don't. These kobolds are guarding these bracers, which sell for about 6,000 gold, which is really nice. Or maybe it's only 4,000, but most magic items sell for about 1,000 or even 500 at this stage in the game, so 4,000 gold is a lot of money. If I had a pure mage, the bracers would be an important source of armor for them, because they give a armor-like armor class boost while not actually being armor. So they're also good for thieves if you have like fighter thieves, so that you can have decent equipment, because plate mail does interfere with thief skills. That's one of the a fighter thief can wear plate mail, but he can't climb or pick locks or stealth nearly as well in plate mail, which makes sense. Basically, you can't. I think in 1st edition, it's just like you can't really use the thief skills if you're in higher than plate mail armor. So these goblins have hidden their loot, which is another +1 short bow and a +1 ring of protection. Ring of protection is weird in 1st edition D&D. It stacks with non-magic armor, but it does not stack with magic armor. So I've put chainmail on red because +1 chainmail is the same armor class as banded mail, but it gives you a move of 12 instead of a move of 9, so it's a little bit superior for chasing down enemies, which is sometimes important when they run away, because there is a morale in this game, which is really fascinating for a game that's 30 years old now. 88 is when this game came out, and so the more enemies you defeat, certain battles have, and the best thing is that the morale is not generic, it's realistic. To a certain degree, as in there are not every encounter has the same morale factors. There's some encounters where the enemies are very are nearly immune to morale, like they're fanatically devoted to killing you, so they're not going to break no matter how many of them you kill. But most battles, after you've killed a certain number of them, they'll either flee in terror or surrender. Fleeing in terror is bad because they stop attacking you, but they run to the end of the room, or they try to run off the map, and they can escape, which normally isn't really a bad thing. It's almost better if they escape, because you lose a little bit of experience in a loot, but not much. This was a really, really bad encounter. I lost 2 characters in this encounter, which basically just slowed it down quite a bit. It's, again, because they don't give much experience, I don't lose that much from it. In fact, losing that experience may have helped in later portions of the game, because I barely had enough experience to level my mages to level 4 at one point. But it's, you know, it still makes this fight go quite a bit slower when 2 of my characters are down. And once your characters start dropping and you have less people that they can spread the attacks out at, because it's very random who they attack, then it tends to get hairier and hairier over time. But this is one of the more annoying encounters, because you have these 4 orc leaders in the back with longbows peppering you with arrows. At the same time, you've got all these other orcs in front. Luckily, they can't all get at you at once, but this game tends to send so many hordes and hordes of enemies at you. It's just super, super bad luck that I lost 2 characters in this battle. It's pretty crazy. Or was it only one? Was there another one I lost too? I might be remembering in a fight. I guess I just lost the 1 character. Though there's still a chance that they're... Nope, yeah, they're threatening, so I just lost the 1 character, not 2. Misremembering. Doesn't matter much. Now, luckily, this game is actually really kind. It went outside of the normal D&D rules in one major aspect. Your characters do not die when they reach 0 hit points. Instead, they just fall unconscious. If they go into the negatives, they will be dying and will slowly bleed out if you don't. They lose like 1 hit point around until they reach negative 10 hit points, and at negative 10 hit points or more, a character is actually killed. So you can revive fallen characters. They don't get experience, similar as they do in a lot of JRPGs when they're out of the party, or, you know, or dead or unconscious or whatever. But it is... but it does slow things down when you have characters that are out. If they're out for a really big important fight that drops loot and they lose like out on 1,000 experience, that can make certain fights harder. So there's only 1 major battle left in the first part of the slums. I divided into 2 sections because the last fight of the slums is a troll fight against 4 trolls who have 36 hit points, armor class of 4, when most everything else has 6 or lower, and of course only like 5 or 6 hit points at most. And 2 ogres as well, and the trolls also regenerate 3 hit points around unless you hit them with fire, and they will, even if they regenerate up to full hit points, they will stand up. You can prevent them standing up by standing on top of the corpse wherever they died. It doesn't show you where enemy corpses are, of course, but if you remember and stand on it, you can prevent them from getting up. But it's a really, really terrible, terrible fight. And what it's the worst fight in the game relative to the level and stuff I'm at. So one of the things I'm doing in this route is making it a little bit safer and easier through a couple of things. But this fight is normally kind of terrible. It was in my old route because I'd have a single mage, and those goblins leaders, all the yellowed goblins, have bows and they're able to shoot, and so they often pepper and knock my mage unconscious. And then she only has 1 sleep spell to put some of them to sleep. But with 2 fighter mages, I can actually put all the goblin leaders to sleep so they won't pepper with arrows, and the fight goes really fast. And here's where I get basically the last arrows that I'm going to be picking up in the game to make sure that I have enough arrows for the end. And even so, I think I still have too many arrows, but, you know, it's just the same thing. Running out of arrows towards the end game is rather inconvenient. Or maybe it wouldn't be. I can probably experiment with getting rid of even more arrows out of my main route. So this Magic User Scroll has a powerful magic missile on it. It fires 2 magic missiles, so it does 4 to 10 damage. And I usually use that in the troll fight because its magic missile damage is guaranteed against pretty much everything. There are a few instances like magic resistance that can stop it, but there's no saving throw, no way to reduce the damage. No 2-hit, it automatically just does the damage, so it's pretty reliable damage. When your magic users get high enough, they can do a lot of damage by spamming magic missile. Okay, so now I'm going back to town, and I'm going to prepare to go to Sokal Keep. Sokal Keep is the one semi-required part of the game. Any place that you can spend money, basically, or at least in temples and shops, you can identify items for a certain cost. I've collected a lot of silver and copper, which is bad because silver and copper coins cost encumbrance, rather than carrying a certain amount of pounds, you carry a certain number of gold pieces of weight. And coins all weigh a gold piece. They're all the same size in D&D, just to make that easier. But your equipment also has a certain amount of gold pieces of weight. And our strengths are high enough that we can carry a lot, but we can still get weighed down by how much copper and silver we're picking up. And it's actually faster to loot the copper and silver than to leave it behind, because it's one less key press. Now, it's the same amount of key press, but it's one that you're prepared for. Automatically sharing is just good. And you can get your sharing back. And basically, one of the things, if you spend your money in a shop, either on identifying something or buying something or whatever, they will change out your money automatically to the smallest available currency, or the fewest available coins, basically. So they'll change it all to gold and platinum. Now, so I go in and identify a bunch of items. You don't need most items. There's some items you need identified, like scrolls, but most items you don't need to identify to use. But I identify a bunch of items mostly to change out my money, so I have a smaller amount of currency. And you need money to trade. It takes 1,000 gold or 200 platinum to train your characters to a new level. I've gotten enough experience to level my fighter cleric to 2nd level cleric, and my 3 straight fighters to 2nd level. I also went and I hired this NPC hero. You can hire a number of NPCs in town, and they take a certain number of shares equal to their level. So basically now my money is split into 10 parts, and the hero gets 4 shares of the money, and my characters each only get 1 share of the money when we share out loot at the end. He doesn't take any equipment, but if I give him equipment, I can't take it back, and he will work automatically. He is AI controlled. But he's really convenient for this fight because there's so many enemies that he serves as a great meat shield and some damage as well. He doesn't have maxed out stats like I do, but he is level 4 and he has a +1 two-handed sword and +1 plate mail. So this was one of the things that Silent Sigil came up with. Shoutouts to Silent Sigil for working on this stuff with me and planning this out. And so having this guy really does help in this battle. I like to form this little wall here. Even if you run away from an attack, they do get to attack you from behind. If you're a thief, you do get to backstab. So that happens as well when they run away from me out of fear. But still, it's a lot safer for me to risk one attack and pull back into this little cube and let my fighter stand on the front line, my hired hero. His name, Hero, is there because that's what he is. He is a hero, not a normal hero. The classes in 1st edition AD&D, each level of a class had a specific title, and that's actually what they're telling you that you're hiring. So if you know those titles in D&D, or if you have an old 1st edition AD&D player's handbook, you can see exactly what they're doing. So there's an alkalite that wants to join you for 3 shares. That's a 3rd level cleric. There's a swordsman that wants to join you for 3 shares. That's a 3rd level fighter. And a hero is what they call a 4th level fighter. I believe an 8th level hero is an 8th level fighter is a superhero. I haven't seen anybody higher than 4th level want to join you. And the fighter is really the only one that's really, really useful. The clerics are okay, but they're not great in melee. They can cast a few hold person spells, but that's it. I have a cleric myself to do most of that when I really want it to. There are another couple of groups of NPCs that'll join you for very specific areas. We only recruit one over the course of the speedrun, and he's relatively useful as he's a high-level cleric. He'll do a few good hold persons. I'll use him for a couple of buffs. But having one constantly taking shares from me is not good. The hired NPCs do not, or the set NPCs, the invent NPCs do not. They operate the same way, totally automatically. You don't get to control them, but they do not demand a certain number of shares from you, generally. Or at least Gurton doesn't, the only one I recruit. I can't remember if the other 2 do or not, because I haven't used them in a long time. This long aggravating fight is the only fight in So-Called Keep. The story of So-Called Keep is that it's a keep on an island out in the bay, and there's a phantom that's haunting it, a specter, that's preventing ships from really sailing out into the Moon Sea. And if we want to use the docks to get more ships out there, they need So-Called Keep cleared of the specter, have it dealt with in some way. So we come and Tyranthraxus' forces have tracked us down. This event always happens even if you haven't done anything in the slums. The logic of the game is assuming that you clear out the slums first, and they tell you, please go clear out So-Called Keep. but you don't actually have to receive any quest to complete it. Not any quest in the game requires you to actually receive the quest in any way before you can complete it. You can complete it at any time. So they assume that you've cleared out the slums, so Tyranthraxus has heard a bit of you, and he sent his forces here to so-called Keep to head you off and defeat you. But we, of course, will slaughter all these guys. There are also a number of roving skeletal bands of undead who are created by the Spectre and are trying to guard the place. They don't hear how many of these guys might have been killed by the skeletons or whatever. They're just there waiting for us in ambush. But you can avoid the skeletons by uttering a password. There's a scrap of paper you can find in the entry room to so-called Keep, where you first arrive from the boat that they send you here in, and it will have the runes for 3 passwords in it. And you have to translate the runes, and then you have to figure out through trial and error which password goes to which encounter, because there are different encounters that require different passwords. One of them, Samusud, the Spectre tells you himself, which is kind of weird, but you have to say Chesney to the skeletons and they'll leave you alone. After you say Chesney once, every time you encounter skeletons, they'll ask if you want to use the password, and you don't have to type it in again. You just say, yes, I say Chesney, and they leave me alone, which is really nice time save. It'd be a pain to type that in every time I ran into skeletons. As such, the encounters, since I don't need to worry about random encounters here really because of the password, it's not a bad place. Again, the main reason that I did the first part of the slums first was mostly to get those 15 encounters out of the way. And I could come here after doing the 15 encounters, and it'd be pretty valuable for the entirety of the slums, but it'd also throw off my experience routing a little bit, because if you get enough experience to level in this game, you don't just level up automatically, you have to go train. That's where all your money is spent. It spends 1,000 gold to train. In addition to that, if you train and you're at enough experience to go up 2 levels, you don't go up 2 levels. Instead, you go up 1 level, and it drops your experience. It actually reduces your experience down to 1 less than the amount you need to level up to the next level. So then you have to go get an encounter or do another quest or something. You get 1 experience point so you can level up again. So the route I've got, clearing out the slums, put my fighters at just under the amount of experience they need to go up 2 levels. So now they're all ready to go up a level again. It gets my cleric up 1 level. Now that I'm done with the hero, I don't need him anymore, I drop him. If he was particularly weak and my characters were strong and in a good position, I'd probably fight and kill him and take his loot. So I come in here in this room and talk to some ghosts. I tell them password Lux, which is one of those 3 passwords we read. They show us where some gems are, and I loot them. They go away after I talk to the Spectre here, so I want to go talk to them first because it's faster for them to show me the gems than for me to look for the gems. Because you aren't guaranteed to do it, and they're pretty well hidden. So we talk to the Spectre, we tell him Lux, we tell him what's going on, and he says, well, if the humans are coming back to retake the city, then my work here is done. There's a new password you need to get the skeletons. Chesney is not going to work anymore, but I'm going to stop bothering ships so they can sail out. Good job. Save this city for me. Thank you. So the old warden of the lighthouse here on so-called Keep, Spectre guy, leaves and tells us where to find this awesome loot, including a +2 mace, which if you're playing casually, you want to give that to your human cleric most likely. But since fighters can use any weapon and we're all fighters, then I just want the biggest magical weapon on my most frontline fighter, which I always make red, my first character, but any of your fighters can use the +2 weapon. The thing about it is that the game calculates whether to use ranged attacks or melee attacks based on the amount of pluses of the weapons you have, basically. So they think that a unmagical bow is better than a +1 weapon. A +1 melee weapon, and a +1 bow is better than a +2 weapon, but a +2 melee weapon is better than a +0 bow. That's kind of how it prioritizes attacking with there. And it's a lot faster to quick combat, as you've seen, than to use manually. The characters in quick combat attack very quickly, they move through, they attack enemies, boom. So I'm a little bit behind here on time because I swapped out what I'm doing. Normally I would go through and clear out the slums first. This was a small mistake. I thought that after clearing this I'd be able to talk to a counselor guy and get something out of the way, but I don't. So instead I got an encounter with guards, and they're like, you can't come in here, and I'm like, okay, sorry. So now we're going to go take on the trolls. We're going to identify our equipment again and make sure we have enough money to train up all of our characters. After appraising this jewelry, one of them is 10,000 gold. Jewelry and gems are special things. You have to actually pick them up, put in your inventory, and then use the appraise there to see how much they're worth, and then you can choose to either sell them or not sell them. If you choose not to sell them, they become an item in your inventory, and you can sell that at any time, but it's only worth half of what they tell you it's worth when you first appraise it. So there's no point in not selling it once you've appraised it, because there's nothing else you can do with it. Unless you seriously want to lose half the value of an item. So we're going to hire another hero here. It's kind of random what characters they offer to join you. Robber, 3rd level thief. Curate, 3rd level. Cleric, there, hero for 4 shares. But the hero is the one that's the best. Having another frontline fighter to battle against the trolls is going to be extremely handy. The trolls are so very mean. I very often lose a character in that fight. I don't this time around, luckily, partially thanks to the hero. The hero has another use as well. The one disadvantage to the hero is that because he takes so much loot and he's another character, he would drop the experience that I get for the troll fight, but luckily I have a way around that, as we're going to see. Because we are perfectly great, lawful good characters, you know, we obviously would never do anything bad. So, sleep spells are not very effective in battle. The trolls have too many hit points, so they're immune to sleep. So having a couple of magic missiles for guaranteed damage is good. I could potentially do more damage with my bow, but I'm not guaranteed to do that damage. I have a very good chance of missing the trolls. First, low-level AD&D, especially in 1st edition, consists of a lot of people missing each other. Now this is the Maze-like Rope Guild, which I always get semi-lost in the maze. I can navigate it, and I navigate it quickly. It's faster than using a map, but still I usually get turned around and run into a dead end once or twice. I first go over here to this guy. I tell him that Olo sent me because Olo wants us. Olo did not send me, but again, you don't actually have to get a quest in order to be able to complete the quest in this game. So that guy has a potion for Olo. We tell him Olo sent us. He gives us the potion. We'll take that back to Olo. I actually forget to take it back to Olo at first, and I can't complete the slums because of that. So I did not know if it was required. I just always went because it's worth experience. Now I know I've been doing the right thing because it is required. Anyway, here's the troll fight. Unfortunately, I forgot to take the arrows off of my companion hero, and so he believes that bows are the way to go. So once we kill off the first couple of trolls and ogre here in the front line, he's going to shoot, so he's not going to run into combat and potentially take soak a lot of damage for me and be easier to take out, to remove from the equation. Very unfortunate, but still this fight goes pretty well, especially compared to the last time I played this. It went disastrously. I think that's where I'm remembering I lost 2 characters. I often lose 1 here, but I think I lost 2 the last time I fought this battle. Not this time though, I don't lose anybody. Spoilers, this fight goes great, despite my mess up. So I'm using my magic missile here for guaranteed 4 to 10 damage. There's 12. Oh, wow. Oh, no, it's not 4 to 10. It's 3 magic missiles. No wonder I like it so much. That would be 6 to 15. That's a equivalent 6th level magic missile, I believe. Later editions of D&D, it's easier to remember. Every 2 levels, you get another magic missile. I think it's every 3 here, or it's like 1, 4, 6, 8, 10, something like that. That you increase up to a maximum of 5 magic missiles. In the game, it just shows us a single spell doing a set amount, but the actual reality of the game is that after a certain level, you fire a certain amount more magic missiles, and they all hit. In some of the editions and some games, you can actually spread the magic missiles out to multiple targets. But of course, you can't in an old D&D game like this. That'd be too complicated. Even though they do let you spread out like full person and stuff. Kind of interesting. Or maybe it just was something that was added to like 3rd or 3.5 or something. I can't remember. I've been playing D&D since 1st edition. When I was 5 years old, my parents helped me make my first character. I was raised to play D&D, so I didn't want to charge forward because my other guy wasn't charging forward. He was using a bow, but unfortunately, because Red has a mace, when I put him on quick combat, he charged forward. I'm like, oh, I forgot that. So it's because of that, this fight got a little bit interesting, but again, you know, it actually isn't bad. I actually take these guys out. I got pretty lucky there when it tried to run away. I hit it from behind with both of my characters, and they managed to kill it. I always prioritize long swords at first, and now I'm ganging up on this fighter and hoping to kill him. And I luckily succeed. With a +1 two-handed sword and being 4th level, he can be quite dangerous. But by killing him, I not only don't have to split experience with him, but now I get to take his loot as well. So I get his +1 plate mail and his I don't get his arrows, interestingly. All of his arrows were destroyed, similar to the kobolds. It's just something that happens sometimes, I guess. Goblins always retain all their arrows. Goblin leaders, at least, I mean. So that's one of the reasons I like to fight them in the early portion of the slums, so I can just get a bunch of arrows. But for some reason, other heroes don't. So even though it's an evil act to betray your hero and kill him, and I don't like doing evil acts, it is very convenient for the speedrun, and it doesn't actually affect your character at all. There is really only one evil choice you can make in the game that has any effect on it seriously. So now this is where I realized I forgot to go give the magic item, the potion to Olo, and collect his loot, so that doesn't count as a cleared space. So the slums is not cleared yet officially. I have to come here and give him the thing, and I could attack him as well. I think it goes badly. I get +1 banded mail as my one lone item, which is not bad. There might have been another. I think he usually gives you 2 or 3 items. There might have been a null item there, but I don't think so. +1 banded mail is for some reason extremely valuable experience-wise. It was like 500 experience to the whole party for that, which is a lot. But now that I've done that, I can go back and clear the slums out, and despite some not so great RNG in a couple of these fights, and despite messing up a little bit, I still end up coming in finishing. So slums part 2 is the equivalent of finishing. My splits are off for So-Called Keep because I swapped So-Called Keep and the troll fight slums part 2 around. So despite all that, I save like a little less than 1.5 minutes in time. I even forgot to split. I usually split when yeah, so I was really close to 1.5 minutes under at this point. I used to go down to the one reliable shop that I go to sell my loot and do identify things and get my money changed out, but then I realized that was kind of pointless because you can do any of that you need to right here in this temple, which is right next to where the everything is. So that means a lot less travel, so I can take less time for things. I do kind of bad with my menuing at this point too, as I get more used to. I'm a little bit off on my menuing because of the recent changes I made to my party composition. So it used to be, oh, I got a Ring of Protection, I know that goes to my mage. Now, Ring of Protection could benefit my characters up to the point where they equip magic armor. So it's like, I could find a use for this, but do I really want to? So I'm kind of bad at figuring out where that's going, but I finally do. So, but every little bit of menuing, of course, subtracts from the overall time. So there's still a lot of improvements I can make here. My last run that I did for Distant Star Cares for Extra Life apparently went pretty bad. I used my previous strat, which is really similar to this one. I just don't do So-Called Keep. I do So-Called Keep after I'm done with the slums, and I don't hire heroes. But I also did a incentive thing where I showed off a interesting little tidbit in the game that's very silly. And I got a 141 time, where my current pace should be about 126, so I was a little surprised. So my RNG, I guess, and that was really bad, and I guess I lost the 5 minutes there, but still, 10 minutes of RNG is pretty serious. My RNG isn't great in this one, but I think this hero strat does save me a bit of time, because most of my mistakes and bad luck were in the early game, for the most part, and I still saved 1.5 minutes in time, just about over what I was previously doing. My next area I'm going to is Kuto's Well. Now, Kuto's Well is interesting because it's never a place that they will tell you to go and clear out, but by going and doing this encounter that I'm going to do, they will reward me for it after I return back home. Now, unfortunately, Kuto's Well does not... I make a mistake here, and I try to go into this room, and so these kobolds burst out. These encounters are slow, and again, not worth very much, so saving and reloading is usually faster. So that was just simply a mistake. Plain and simple, because I tried to walk into the room. Anytime you try to walk into a wall too close to the well, monsters would come out. Kuto's Well is a very monster-infested place, and even after you technically clear it by defeating Norris Grey, the bandit chief, random encounters will still happen, so it can be a nasty place. I didn't have bad luck with encounters in this area in this game. Just during one trip did I get kind of bad luck. So this is a set encounter. One lizard man and a bunch of giant lizards. It's an annoying fight, but not particularly difficult. These lizards have a pretty low armor class. I'm now, like, my fighters are level 4, I want to say. Yeah, they're actually level 4 now. So they're pretty tough. And my fighters, my multi-class fighters are like level 3-3 or 3-2. So we have a lot of hit points we can soak now. We're no longer in danger of being hit. We come in here, free this old woman who's like an old witch or something. I don't know what point she has. She kind of tells us a few things. I can't even remember what it is. And then she tells us to search around for loot. We search around for loot, find some good stuff. Plus one banded mail is the best thing. There's some really good bracers here, but again, since we don't have a regular mage, we don't need the quarterstaff for the bracers. Quarterstaff is basically the best melee weapon a mage can use for their feeble melee attempts, but other than a pure mage, you don't need a quarterstaff. They're not very good weapons. They take 2 hands and only do 1d6 points of damage. Now, weapons in 1st edition D&D have an odd quirk that they do different damage to large creatures. And most swords, with the exception of broadswords, unfortunately, since I get so many broadswords, most swords do more damage to large enemies. So that's why longswords are so good, because they do the most damage of any one-handed weapon in the game. They do 1d8 to normal-sized or small-sized enemies, and they do 1d12 to large-sized enemies. Only 2 other weapons do the same or more damage. A halberd, which is 2-handed, does 1d10 to small medium creatures and 1d12 to large creatures, and a 2-handed sword does 1d10 to medium and small, and 3d6, so up to 18 damage to large creatures, which will come into play later on. So 2-handed swords and long swords are your best weapons overall. They have all these other weapons, but they're not really all that great unless they're extremely magical. So since there are more kobolds here, putting a bunch of them to sleep is useful. Some lizardmen can also go to sleep, but not as many because they have a lot more hit points. The way sleep works is, it's broken because it has no saving throw. Instead, there's a certain amount of hit points that it will put to sleep, and you roll that when you cast the spell, and then it kind of determines randomly who gets affected by it, up to the certain amount of hit points. It usually does enough hit points to put a ogre to sleep, but if you place it, but if you're unlucky, it won't. I did a fight, I think during my last marathon fight where I lost 2 characters in the troll fight, because I hadn't used the strategy, I didn't have level 2 casters, so I only had my regular sleep spell, so I tried to use it on the ogres so they'd be out of the fight, and it failed on both of them. Both of them cast their sleep spell, and I popped it right on the ogre, and it should have put the ogre to sleep, but neither one did enough to put the ogre to sleep, and I was very sad. So now I've come and looted it, so now I've cleared the quest out. This area underground, now under Kuto's Well, I can rest perfectly fine. It's now my hideout instead of Norris Gray's hideout, and now the enemies in Kuto's Well will be more likely to try and run away from me, but they are not guaranteed. I save here just in case because of that, because I can still get surprised by enemies who decide to kill me, and if I'm fighting 20 gnolls, that's a long fight. But now I can go and turn in and get a little bit more experience for this. If there's anything I do that I might want to cut out of the run, it might be Kuto's Well, because I don't think that its experience is all that vital. It puts me a little bit ahead. But really, I think it's still pretty necessary, because it gives me a little bit more experience before I do Yarash's Pyramid, so that my characters will be, I believe, 3rd level mages, so that I can cast Stinking Cloud on Yarash. So I have 3 characters who can potentially put Yarash out, and I went in there and rest in order to get to a new day so that I can come in and clear out the quest. Boom. Now I'm trying to figure out where I'm going for training. I can't train up my cleric, although I try. Oh, I can train my cleric. Cleric level 3, good. I guess I don't get level 3 mage yet, do I? We're about to find out. I do. Okay, so good, yes. So that's why Kuto's Well is good, because that'll get me level 3. Good to remember that. One of the nice things about commentating on it after I've done this is that I get to double check on my theories. Once I'm a little bit better. Once again, one of the things that I don't get any fighter levels, though. I need to remember that. Just I get my cleric and my magic user levels from Kuto's Well. But one of the things that's that I need to improve on is knowing exactly where I get my levels, which I kind of do, to a degree. But, knowing it for certain is, and not wasting time there. Like, if I don't go into that, into the training hall there, I can save a few seconds if I know that I'm not going to get more fighter levels from Kuto as well. But anyway, now I'm going to go to Yarash's Pyramid, which is supposed to be a later quest, but it's not that difficult, and it's worth a lot of experience. It's actually the easiest way to get the most experience at this point in the game, and although I don't need it as much, it's a valuable enough play that it's always worth it. The 5,000 XP will get me basically the last levels that I'm going to be getting in the game. Got a bad encounter here, had to reload. And it's usually faster to reload after encounters. I save the game so fast, you may not even have noticed when I'm saving, it goes so quickly. But it's over here, you have to climb up to this northern part of this lake. And Yarash is a mage who's making mutant lizard men, and he's polluting the river with the equipment he's using to make these lizard men mutant, and he's going to make an army of mutant lizard men and conquer the whole region. And we have to stop him both to prevent him from, you know, trying to attack our people in Phlan, and also to prevent the river from being polluted. So it'll stop being the barren river and be a good river that'll provide good water to people. So we go into this teleporter maze. It's a really easy maze if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, you get lost easily. Now here's a password. We have to enter this password of knock knock. This is the copyright protection boss. They give you these runes, and you're supposed to use the copyright wheel to figure out what the runes are. At the beginning of the game, when you first load up the game, you're supposed to use this wheel to enter a password or they won't let you in. It's a copyright protection thing. But it has many uses, like in So-Call's Keep, they give you a password you translate. They give you the password here that they translate. Most of the time when it's in-game, it just makes the area easier because it gives you passwords to avoid things and stuff. But here it is actually vital because if you enter the wrong password, this giant mutant lizard man comes out of a hidden compartment and just kills the party. Doesn't do damage, doesn't start a fight, just... Oh, he comes in, his claws tear into your party. This party member is dead, is dead, is dead, is dead, is dead. The party has been killed. Game over. And it drops you from the game. So you have to know what the password is or be able to translate it. So that was Yarash. Yarash is a mage who can be troublesome if he's allowed to cast spells, but I have 3 characters who can cast spells that can disable him immediately. And of course I can attack him. If you hit a character during a turn before they get to act, they don't get to cast spells. He also has 3 loot rooms that we're going to explore. It's pretty awful loot overall. Oh, the club. That's what I was throwing. That's right. I don't think I pick up that club again. Your characters always prioritize thrown weapons first. It's pretty funny. I got 2 +2 Ronsours as well. That was pretty crazy. That's okay. +2 weapons are good, even though even if they're wimpy two-handed weapons like Ronsours that don't do a lot of damage and are two-handed, so you can't use shields. The +2 with the chance to hit and everything is just pretty nice. Worthless magic user scroll. Not really great loot here though, and I knew it wasn't. My entire game changed when I picked up a necklace of missiles in this room. Necklace of missiles allows you to throw fireballs just as you use the item as your turn action, and you throw a fireball, and sometimes some of the fireballs are wimpy. They can be really weak fireballs, but for the most part, it's the best magic item in the game, or second best magic item in the game, because spamming fireballs allows you to wipe out huge hordes of enemies, of which you will see a lot over the course of this game. I accidentally go back into the pyramid here and waste a bit of time as well, so this is another time sink. Here we can see that the river is, with these wonderful, wonderful 8-bit graphics from 1988, we can see that the river has healed itself, even though we didn't destroy the equipment. There's a lot that happens in the pyramid that even when I'm not concentrating on doing anything, it's hard to remember it all. But we go in, the room right before Yarash is all the equipment, and that's an encounter I didn't want. They were merchants, you can talk to them and you won't get in a fight, but I accidentally hit flee automatically, and I couldn't flee from them, so the battle started. And so I was going to fight all of these good guy mages and stuff. Again, not that it would have actually mattered, like nobody would have been mad at me, but it would have been a long, annoying fight, and I didn't want that. So would have probably gotten good loot from them all, but again, didn't want it. But you don't actually need to destroy the equipment that's polluting the river. You just have to kill Yarash, and it counts as the quest solved, and the river goes back to normal, so that's pleasant. So if you do destroy the equipment, you have to quickly get out of there or it'll blow up on you and deal damage to the party. We don't want to do that, so we just ignore them. I once again had to wander around on search mode to pass time until it became day so that I could come and turn in the pyramid. Despite my bad luck, I still gained some time there, which was pretty surprising. I think my fight against Yarash in my previous PB went really badly. Like, he didn't really get anything off, but I didn't paralyze him right away, so the fight was kind of slow. And I also might have gotten a few more encounters, so... The luck here wasn't too bad, though it wasn't great, but apparently it was better than it was before. When you gain hit points as a multi-class, by the way, they determine how many points you would have gotten, and then they divide it by the number of classes you have, which is 2 usually. But you can be like a cleric, fighter, magic user, or a fighter, magic user, thief if you're a half-elf, or even the thief if you're a regular elf. But that will divide your experience and your hit points by 3 every time you level up. It's kind of balanced by the fact that you gain so many level ups, but because the mage gets a lot less than a mage will get 3 to 6 hit points, and a fighter will get 5 to 14 because of the hit dice and how Constitution works. Because just like how only fighters can have exceptional strength, only fighters get maximum benefit from Constitution for hit points. They can get up to plus 4 hit points per level from an 18 Constitution, 3 at 17, and 2 at 16, and 1 at 15. Again, another reason why you want super high stats in AD&D, because you need a 15 in order to have any kind of good effect, period. Period. Nothing else helps you. Only the 15 or higher, and at strength 16 or higher. So 14, 13 stat doesn't actually affect the game in any meaningful way. It's super frustrating. Later D&D fixed that by having you get like a plus to whatever the stat benefits every 2 points. And I'm messing up a little bit here with stuff. Something weird was happening with the reloading and stuff, and I had to fix it. So that ended up costing me a little bit of time as well. Despite that, things continued to go well afterwards. So once I finally get this set. So this is the screen where you would put in the code word. They tell you the area. It was kind of neat how the wheel works to have all these code words in hand. But of course, luckily, GOG.com disables the code wheel for you. So that it doesn't matter what, you just hit enter and move in. So I'm passing through the library now, which is a perfectly safe place, in order to get to Cordona's textile house. Now this councilman gave me this quest to go and find his family's treasure box, is heirlooms here. And so we have to fight this ogre and his hobgoblin minions for it. And we're going to open the box because it's worth more experience and because we'll get a useful magic item out of it. Also, it takes less time. I could possibly skip this now, actually. This particular fight. It used to be one of the most valuable sources of experience, and the Gauntlets of Ogre Strength are okay, but not really super necessary. They'll make one of my half-elves to have an 18-100 strength, so that I'm a little bit better in melee combat with them. But since they're usually in the back as archers anyway, it's not a huge deal. It also was a huge amount of experience back when I was using a single human mage. This is the final encounter that would get me to 25,000 experience, so I could reach level 5 and get a fireball spell. But since I don't need to worry about that anymore, I think that I'll get enough experience from the last few things to get the last couple of level ups that I need. I'm going to take a look at that as I'm continuing to commentate on this run as I watch it. I may end up being able to skip this fight entirely, which would not be a bad thing, because it's a little bit time consuming. And I mean, again, the Gauntlets of Ogre Power is the only thing you get from there. There's the club that I threw. You can throw clubs. And it's just one of the weird things, your quick combat character, so it took me by surprise. I forgot that I had that magic club. I don't think I even identified it. I didn't identify after I went through Yarash's pyramid, which was a little bit of a misstep. It's good to identify a bunch of the stuff, find out if it's useful, and get it set out so that people can use it. Some of my people are using like +2 bronze swords, and I don't even realize because I haven't identified them. But anyway, if this experience is no longer necessary, which I don't actually believe it is necessary, then I can skip this long fight and save another couple of minutes, probably. Because I do not believe that I do not believe that the +2 damage and +1 to hit from the gauntlets is making a huge difference at this stage of the game. And that's the only... There's other loot in the box, but it's just money, and I have plenty of money. From selling my jewelry and selling the bracers, I have plenty of money to level up my characters. So there it is. Here I'm going to grab the Gauntlets of Ogre Power, which you don't need to identify at all. They're automatically identified. 18,100 Strength. Boom! Silver is mighty, just like the humans. Gauntlets of Ogre Strength are actually goblins of maximum human fighter strength. This is a set encounter that happens whenever you enter this square. Entering it from this area gives you this battle straight up on them, which is nice. If I... This fight can also trigger on the far north, but the enemies are in this square located, so when they start the fight, they'll start far away from you if you go by the other way that I usually used to go in my old route. So it's rather convenient that I come here. There's another encounter here that I just added to the route, which is a lot better. When I first got the Necklace of Missiles and figured out that I didn't need to level up my mage to level 5 because now I had access to an infinite number of fireballs. So I want the fireball for one fight in particular, which is really nasty without it. And just very long without it. Making sure you have a fireball as well is worth it, combined with, getting experience for safety net on all your other characters getting up high enough level. So that's why I go for it. So having that fireball automatically saved a huge amount of time and basically put me in a state where I was like, well, if I don't get that drop, there's no way I can get a PB. It saves 15 minutes just having that because of how much experience I have to grind to get fireball. So eventually I was thinking about it, and I searched around in my guides and stuff to try and figure out where else can I get a guaranteed fireball. There are a couple of places, but the only place that's fast to get is right here from this encounter. This Goblin Mage Shaman has a Scroll of Fireball, which I can identify and then use in the Battle of the Temple of Bane to clear out most of the orcs in that encounter, which is super useful. So that's the reason why I come in and do this fight. It's not a super hard fight, but it's one of the places where it's good for me to have my... this necklace is not a necklace of missiles. It's a cursed necklace. I don't want it. It's bad. So don't think it's a necklace of missiles and think, oh, I got a necklace of missiles. No, it's not going to help you. But having Hold Person for fights like this is good because it is a shaman, she is a cleric, she can cast Hold Person on my characters. I have some really bad encounter luck here trying to get out, and I have to save and reload. I have to reload my save several times. It is very inconvenient. Lose a bit of time from that too. And despite all my previous problems with loading and all the times I had to reload and stuff, I get a pretty good time here, so I did well, and I did definitely get some good saves. This is really annoying because I have this little frog encounter, which is pretty quick. It's faster to fight the frogs than it is to reload. They're actually not all that bad. See, I'm cleaving through them easy. But then I get into another cool fight and have to reload anyway, so that cost me like a minute just from these two encounters. My character was automatically turning the undead, which at higher levels is really valuable because it will instantly destroy low-level undead, but at this stage of the game doesn't mean very much. But the cleric was useful in the previous fight because of the enemy cleric, who can cast Hold Person on my characters. So having a cleric gives me another chance to cast a spell at range that will paralyze the enemy spellcaster so I can deal with them and don't have to worry about getting held. And because that actually comes up for the first time in quite a while in the Temple of Bane fight, which I will be getting into. So again, the library is a place where you can get some valuable equipment and stuff, including nearly infinite constitution through a glitch in the game. There's a nifty glitch in the game, or rather exploit. It's not really technically a glitch, but it's definitely not intended. But you can remove one of your characters from the party to put them in the party pool when you're in the training area. And then you can create and add a new character and who can serve as baggage. You transfer magic items you want to copy to that new character. And then you save the game before you do any of this. And then you remove that character, which puts them in the party pool. And then you load up your save game, which happened before you gave the equipment to the guy. Then add him to the party, and he will still have the equipment you gave him. And therefore you can take it from him, and then you multiplied your equipment. You then remove him back from the party to put him back in the pool, or you drop him and make a new one. Anything you like. So it's very It's a quick way of getting equipment. I don't use it in the speedrun, not because it's actually glitchless, although I would consider them two different categories, glitchless versus glitched for using it. I would use it in 100%, for instance, but there's no point in the game where it's worth it. I don't get any items good enough to spend the time doing it, because it takes a little while to set up, and I just don't need any of those items that much. If I theoretically could do it with Necklace of Missiles to, if I was to find one early enough, but otherwise it's just not worth the time to worry about. The most powerful item is what I'm getting from the Temple of Bane, and that's what I'm focusing on getting. I didn't realize I have +2 broadsword. That's really powerful. Any +2 or better weapon is pretty powerful. But, yeah, see, all these things I didn't identify that were proved useful to me. But so anyway, the Temple of Bane is the Dust of Disappearance, which I'll get to when we get it. It's the item I need to beat Tyranthraxus. It's by far the most powerful magic item in the game. And I couldn't multiply that, and I do in my Curse of the Azure Bonds run, because you get Dust of Disappearance really early in the game, and Necklace of Missiles really early in the game. So you can multiply those and give them to your party, and it makes a lot of the fights go a lot faster. But at this stage in the game, I get them too late to be useful. So I do get to level 4, just barely, because of that. I don't know if I need level 4 here, though. I didn't even level my fighters, because I think they're already level 5. So now we recruit Durton. There's this temple, the Temple of Bane that I've been talking about. It used to be a temple to Tyr back in the day, but after monsters conquered the city, they desecrated the temple and rededicated it to Bane, the evil god of death of the original Forgotten Realms universe. If you know anything of Forgotten Realms lore, and like Baldur's Gate, the Time of Troubles, when the gods became mortal, Bane was killed, and his role was split up to Cyrus. Cyrus took on the aspect of Baal, Lord of Murder, and Death, which was Bane's domain. But Bane is your primary adversary, or the patron behind your adversaries in the first, in all 4 of the Gold Box games, basically. So they want us to help them kill the. They want us to help them take the temple back so they can rededicate it to Tyr, and so it's a major quest, and it's also. Gives us a super valuable magic item, so we're going to go do that now. So I'm checking out my scrolls, which I hadn't checked out before. They're useless, unfortunately, except for the one with Fireball on it, so I'm ditching it. Durton is relatively useful, especially for a prayer buff before the fight. This area, now certain areas, encounters are worse. Like, I totally reload after Kuto's Well, because a lot of the encounters there are bad. They take time, and but in certain other areas, if I run away successfully before battle starts in the Kuto's Well, if the monsters don't find me, it's still bad because I'll end up somewhere random. I'll be lost. I won't be able to activate area map. You know, you're running over event. You have no idea where you are. They're trying to simulate that. This is the fight you sometimes have to do. Sometimes when you defeat the orcs in the first area, which along with defeating the High Priest of the Bane here, clears out this area so we won't get any more encounters. And sometimes I get a leather holy symbol from them, and when I do, I don't have to fight the guards at the gate. So he gives off immediately and holds 2 of my people, which means that they're going to be one shot, and I can't deal with that. That's so I have to reload at this point. So very unlucky there that he went first and was able to do that. Rather unfortunate. Again, there's a huge amount. There's probably about 3 minutes I can save with better luck, just from just generic luck things between Yarash's Pyramid and the Temple of Bane here. So I cast Blessing and Prayer with Durton. He's useful for that. He also can cast some Hold Person spells. But see all of these orcs. There's so many orcs here. They waste so much time wandering around. And there are a couple of other places where a fireball would be really useful if I had it, but there's no way to get a fireball by those moments. Like So-Called Keep is the other one I really wish I had a fireball. But since I don't have access to one, all I can do is just fight through it. But that would save me like 4 minutes if I had a fireball spell. So I spend a lot of time going around getting experience, but it saves automatically probably 5 to 10 minutes just in this fight by clearing out all of these enemies. And of course, having a cleric who can paralyze my people makes all of these other normally wimpy guys exponentially dangerous. So clearing them out is really good for that as well. Unfortunately, it's not going to cause morale break. These guys will never surrender because they're fanatical. But clearing this many of them out makes the fight go a lot faster, and, you know, just getting all this other experience makes it really safe. But again, I don't think that I actually need that fight with the Ogre anymore for the Gauntlets of Ogre Power and Cordana's thing, because I would get enough experience to level up my characters to 4 here, and I think that's the only level up I have left to do. I'm already a level 5 fighter. I got that after Yarash's Pyramid. And yeah, so I think I'll cut that fight out. That'll save me another minute. Awesome. So Stinking Cloud is the only useful 2nd level spell in the game. It's kind of a weird spell. It makes this little square. Wherever you place the cursor for it is the top left portion of this 2x2 square. And enemies that are inside it have reduced armor class from starting to cough, unless they're immune to like coughing fits, which would be undead and golems and stuff like that. But anything living is at least going to cough, even if they make their saving throw, reducing their armor class and make them easier to hit. And if they fail their saving throw, which they have to make every round, they will choke and gag, and then they will be helpless, and you can one-shot them just like with a sleep spell or a hold person spell. So it's a pretty useful little thing for that. It's kind of interesting in that the AI in Pool of Radiance is better than the AI in Curse of the Azure Bonds. Computer-controlled characters, including both enemies and your quick-controlled characters, will not wander into a Stinking Cloud unless they started in the Stinking Cloud to begin with. They're going to avoid it and go around it, and if their way is blocked by it, they're just going to stand outside and you can pepper them with arrows. However, in Curse of the Azure Bonds, they will rush into it, so it makes it more valuable against the enemy, but also more dangerous to use, because if you place it wrong, your characters will charge into it and choke and gag, and then they'll be one shot, which is bad. So I looted some scrolls, which I sometimes use, or a scroll specifically, although I didn't end up using it this time around. I probably can skip it now. I used to grab it for purposes, but it's now actually extra useless. But most importantly, I grabbed a couple of good potions and the Stinging Cloud spell. I also memorized some new spells here, which I really don't need to do, I think. The Stinking Cloud's actually useful. No, it is a good thing I did that, and it's a good thing to get level 4 at some point, because 2 Stinking Clouds is extremely valuable for the fight against the fighters. So I think I did right here. I definitely did right here. Memorizing spells again. Since when I have a normal mage and spells are the only thing they have, having 4 magic missiles at level 5 right now, and their fireball and or haste spell, and the Stinking Clouds allows them to contribute a lot in combat. But now with fighters at this point, and I only have 2 fights left in the game, and so one of them is going to be very easy, and one of them is going to be not so easy. No, they're both going to be easy. My mind is really drifting right now, sorry. It's an easy enough fight regardless, but it gets a lot easier with Stinking Clouds. Just makes them go faster because I can put most of my enemies into choking and gagging and one-shot them. They have 87 hit points, so being able to one-shot them is really valuable. Again, I have to pass the time here in order to enter into the City Hall and complete their quest reward, which theoretically I could choose not to do at this point. Oh, Cordona appears and is like, how dare you open my family treasure, I'll get revenge on you. One of the reasons I don't care about that act, which is semi-evil though, is because he's evil and he's planning to betray us anyway, because he's actually working for Tyranthraxus. There's a bunch of questline in that. He's supposed to send you to Zentil Keep, but he sent you to be sacrificed to them, basically. Not, like human sacrifice thing, but you're a toady, which he's using to gain their favor. They're going to turn you in. But we don't complete that quest because we don't complete smoke quests in the game. There's nothing you need to do in order to confront Tyranthraxus. You can go fight him at the beginning of the game, but you're not likely to win. So if you do a New Game Plus, it'd be like a 15-minute run, because I just run straight to Tyranthraxus and kill him with my high-level party members. There is potentially a way to do that, but it's difficult in this game. It's a lot easier in Curse of the Azure Bond, so I have it as a separate category, just in case I ever decide to start doing a New Game Plus with it. because it would be a little bit more interesting because there's more involved in it. Yeah. But, so now we go into Pool Plaza, we disguise ourselves as monsters. It's a quest I used to do. They're having an auction. You can disguise yourself, and your charisma determines if your disguise is seen through or not. It also determines it right there. Because as I was approaching the gate where that blocks the city, I met a cart of merchants bringing supplies in, and I paid them 250 gold to get their wagon so I could hide in it and pretend to be merchants. I do a couple of bumps here that I'm not supposed to. You can try and cut through these hedges, but you might take damage and get poisoned. It's not worth it. The Hedge Mage is the one place where I still use a map to make sure that I'm going right, because it's bad to get lost in there. So then you meet some bugbears. If they don't see through your disguise, depending on your charisma, which they did once, they will attack you, and then you have to reload. So it's good to save before the merchant encounter, actually, just in case. I don't remember too often, though. The one time it happened. It's very rare, but it does happen, and that's a bit of a time loss, unfortunately. I think it happened to me during my marathon run, actually. It's one of the reasons why I lost a couple minutes, I think. It's probably about a 2-minute loss on its own, since I didn't do much. I'm using some potions of speed here, which give haste, which will double my number of attacks. I have 2 of them that I've collected, so I give them to my 2 main fighters. I have a potion of giant strength, which gives my main fighter a 21 strength for this encounter. And then I use the Dust of Disappearance, which makes us invisible. And invisibility in D&D normally goes away when you attack, but this invisibility is super awesome. Invisibility is invincibility. If you are next to an invisible enemy, it will let you attack them, but if you're at range, or if you're trying to use any kind of ranged thing like a spell, you can't target invisible characters, even if your buddy is right next to them and you know where they are. So I'm using hold person spells. Again, this is another thing that's useful for the cleric, is that I can use hold person spells to make enemies helpless and be able to one-shot them. Very valuable. Again, because I'm fighting 12 level 8 fighters that have 87 hit points and armor class 1. The armor class 1 is pretty good. It becomes 1 when they're choking and gagging, or when they're coughing in the stinking cloud. It lowers the armor class by 4, luckily. So it makes them a lot easier to hit, but being helpless is a lot better, because that's only 87 hit points that I have to get through instead of, it's a one-shot instead of 87 hit points that I have to get through. So having 2 fighter mages here with 2 stinking clouds each allows me to pretty much cover the battlefield. Any ones who don't choke and gag immediately, or a couple of the stragglers in the corners, I can use hold person on to make helpless, and then pepper them with quick arrows to wipe them out. So this fight goes pretty quickly in most cases. It without stinking cloud and I use magic missiles, which is kind of insignificant damage, but whatever. It's a little bit. It's at this point, a magic missile actually probably does do more damage than trying to use my bows, although it's a little bit slower. But it's guaranteed damage, which the bow shots could potentially do more, but most likely won't, because I'm not likely to hit them. But that big strength helps out a lot. So now that I've killed them, we're invisible and we're looting these guys. So 12 characters not being run and gang up us is good, but the Dust of Disappearance is what makes the next fight, the final fight against Tyranthraxus, a cakewalk. If I was too low level, these guys still can hit me, and if they got lucky and hit me, they'd kill me really easily, and Tyranthraxus especially would. So having 5th level fighters is... I would say you could probably do it with 4th level, but it'd be really tough. So maybe eventually I'll try cutting out a few more of these experience things and see how it goes. But I think even just having level 4 magic users with the dual stinking clouds each, so a total of 4 to let me cover the battlefield, goes a huge way to saving time. So even though I theoretically could even... So I really think that gaining all the levels I do for Temple of Bane and getting that scroll is super duper duper valuable. I've often considered how much experience I can cut out, but interestingly, Tyranthraxus offers to let you join him, and he offers it to every character. So each character individually, you have to choose if they join Tyranthraxus or not. If they choose not to join Tyranthraxus, they fight him. If they join Tyranthraxus, you have to fight them here in addition to Tyranthraxus himself. So you can make the boss fight more difficult by giving more characters to Tyranthraxus. Now, he would want to breathe on us, which would do like 40 to 80 points of damage. Our party would be decimated, but he can't target us because of Dust of Disappearance. So that's the main reason why you need it to beat Tyranthraxus. Or you need a lot of levels. Doing it without Dust of Disappearance would be a super duper challenge run, which I never want to do, so don't expect to ever see that. So this cutscene is unskippable. You can't advance text. You have to sit and wait until it finishes out. Weirdly, the last text box goes super quickly. I usually read it out dramatically when I'm streaming normally because I'm done talking and stuff. But voila, he pulls... Tyranthraxus was going to possess our bodies, but Bane pulls him through. We come in to report our findings, and at this point, boom, game over. So that was it. Thanks for watching. Very proud of this and hope to have an even better run in the future that I'll probably be streaming. So until then, later, guys.